few months ago I did a video on the best flash for beginners, and it was this Godox TT350 together with the radio trigger, this X1T from Godox. And this combination really I felt was the best way to get started in off-camera flash photography. And it's one that I personally use in my professional work, but I've actually gotten a lot of questions about this flash on how to use it off camera without the radio trigger, but just using it via the optical trigger, on the front of the flash here. And some of the problems people were having was they could see the flash firing, but it wasn't illuminating the subject at all, meaning the flash firing was out of sync with the camera. So I'm going to walk you through really the best settings so that you get a very reliable flash fire in sync with the picture taking on the camera. Alright, so let me just demonstrate what's going on here. So I'm going to turn this flash on. I'm going to put it in manual mode because that's the only way this works off camera. Let's put it at full power. And I'm going to put it in slave mode S1. And then if we look at the super control panel on the Pen F, or I'm sorry, on the EM10 Mark II, we have it in auto mode. And the problem is if you do it like this, and I take a picture, let's take a picture without the flash first. And that's what we get. Now if I add this flash to it at full power, it should be super bright. And the flash did fire, but you can see there was no difference in the exposure when it should have been much brighter. So what you need to do ideally, or typically what you would do, is put this flash into S2 mode, which I've, told a lot of people to do. And then when we do that, you can see now that the flash fired and it's being reflected in the picture we took. And over time, I've found that even in S2 mode, the flash doesn't fire reliably, every time and illuminate the subject like it just did. Another problem with using this in S2 mode is that the camera itself doesn't know you're using an off-camera flash. So it's going to adjust the power of the on-camera flash to expose the image properly, meaning it's going to give it, enough light, so you really don't need to add any more light, unless you're trying to do some other effects and things, which maybe you're trying to do. But really the only way to use this flash off camera is when both the flash and the camera itself are in manual mode. So I'm going to go into the settings on the flash first. No matter what settings are showing on the back of the screen here, and I'll walk you through it, I'll get you to where you need to be so that this flash is in the proper mode to be in sync with this camera. And then I'll show you the settings you need to be on the camera so that you can get the proper exposure. And then we'll do a couple of test shots just for fun and end it there. Alright, so this is the default setting for the flash. And no matter what you see on the screen right now on your own flash, I'm going to walk you through how to get to where we need to be. So the first thing we need to do is make sure that the radio trigger in this flash is off. Because we're not going to be able to get anywhere else until we turn the radio off. Right now the radio is trigger off, but the way you turn it on and off is you hold the sync button down like this. And then you'll see a little antenna blinking down here. And then you can change the radio trigger modes like so. So this is in master mode where this flash will control other flashes. This is slave mode where this flash is being controlled by radio from another flash. But if I rotate it again, you'll see that all of the icons disappeared and we're back to this antenna again. And then we just click OK and that turns the radio off. So I'll do that one more time. I hold the sync button down and I rotate the jog dial or the wheel until I see only the antenna blinking, and then I click the set button. Just like that. Alright, so now you should have no icons down here at the bottom, or at least you shouldn't have any icon over here on the left corner. The next thing we need to do is get the flash in the manual mode. So we just click the mode button, and that toggles this, as you can see, through different modes. So that's TTL. I push it again, that's manual mode because there's an M up here. And then I click it again. This is a multi-strobic or something. I never use this. Let's click it again to TTL, but let's get into manual mode. And then underneath it, you'll see the flash power output is set to 1/1, which means this flash is at full power output. But you can change that by rotating the wheel here. Counterclockwise lowers the power, so this is 1/4. This is 1/8. All the way down to 1/128 power. So we'll just leave it at there for now. And then the next button here, and that's all we need to do there. The next button here is the zoom button, and that controls the zoom head on the flash here. So right now you see a little AU here next to, I think that says MM zoom. I don't have my glasses on, I really can't see it, but we want to change this so that if I click the zoom button, you'll see the AU is blinking. I can turn the wheel now and change that to 24. But I can narrow the beam all the way to 105 millimeters. And I don't know if you can see this. But you see how the zoom head's kind of moving inside as I'm rotating the wheel? Basically what that's doing is at 24 millimeters, the beam is going to be as wide as the flash can produce. And then 105 millimeters, the beam of light is going to be narrower. You know, you can experiment with that a little bit when you're doing your off-camera flash or practicing, but we'll just leave this at 24 for today. Or for now, I should say. And that's all we need to do there is put this at 24 millimeters. And this is set normally automatically when you have the flash attached to the camera and you have a zoom lens and it's zooming in and out. It'll automatically adjust the width of the flash so it illuminates everything properly. But let's look at the next button here, the sync button. Now this is actually the high-speed sync button. And you'll notice when I toggle it on and off, this little icon right here comes on and off. And we want to make sure that icon is off, meaning it's not showing at all. Because what happens is when the flash is in high-speed sync mode, and when you're in manual mode using the optical trigger, I don't think high-speed sync works anyway, but basically it limits the minimum power to 1/16 power, because remember I had left it at 1/128, but now it's saying 1/16. So if I dial this back to 1/28 and I turn on high-speed sync, you can see it snaps back to 1/16 power. So let's just make sure this is off. I'm going to dial this back down to 1/128. Now the next button here is the slave mode. And we have an S1, we have S2, and then we have off. So when it's off, this optical trigger here is going to be off and it's not going to fire the flash whenever the on-camera flash fires. So we're going to make sure this is an S1. Now earlier I talked about putting the flash into S2 like so. And the difference between S1 and S2 is S1 tells the optical trigger to fire the flash on the first flash it sees from the camera. And then S2, and that, you know, that makes sense, right? But S2 tells the flash to fire on the second flash it sees from the camera. And if you don't know this already, when you have your flash, if we look at the super control panel, when we have our on-camera flash set to auto, every time you push the shutter button, the camera actually fires the flash twice. And that's why they put S2 modes on the optical triggers, because the first flash that the camera fires, it doesn't actually take a picture. It fires a flash and then measures the exposure with the flash. And then it calculates what it thinks the power output of the flash should be to get the correct exposure. And then it actually takes the picture and fires the flash, adjusting the power output, calculated based on the previous flash that it took. So every time you push the shutter button, it always fires the flash twice when the flash is in auto mode. And that's why there's an S2 on here. But we're not going to use that because, like I said, I haven't found that too reliable either. So we're going to put this into S1 just like this. So hopefully at this point you've been able to get to this screen where we have manual mode, 1/128 power, 24 millimeter beam on the zoom head on the flash, and we're in S1 mode. So all that being said, we now need to change the settings on the camera, because if we look at this super control panel, we're in auto mode, and remember I said when you push the shutter button it fires twice. But since we have the flash on S1, we want the camera to only fire the flash once, and the only mode that this camera fires the flash one time and takes the picture is when the flash is in manual mode. So let's do that. So red eye reduction fires actually I think 3 or 4 times, and then this is a fill flash, but this is still going to fire the flash twice. This is the flash off. We obviously don't want that. And then these are the slow sinks if you're going to use a slow shutter speed, etc. But the last one here is manual mode. And then by default, I think right below it, it says manual mode full power. And I like to set this down to the minimum, which is 1/64th power. Because I want any light coming out of this flash to have as little impact on the image itself versus, using the light from this flash. I only want this flash to be the primary light, and any light coming out of this might be a little bit of fill light, if at all. When I'm this close to the subject, like I'm going to be taking pictures of my Pen F, it's going to have a little bit of light spill onto it, but it's not a big deal. So let's just take a picture here like this. And I'm going to cover up the optical trigger with my hand like this and take a picture. And as you can see, the image is very, very dark. I mean, it's getting a little bit of light from like my video lights up here, but there's very little light getting picked up from the flash. So let's go ahead and add this now. When you use this, you want to make sure that this optical trigger here on the front is facing the output of the flash here. So I'm going to point it this way. And let's try, oops, let me get this flash out of frame. And there. So now you can see that this added plenty of light to the Pen F here. And that's a pretty horrible picture, but for all intents and purposes, this is the most reliable way to get the flash to fire and be in sync with the camera. All right, so let's just get a little bit creative just for fun, because I want to show you what you can do with an off-camera flash, even with like this terrible setup here. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put the camera into monochrome mode. And I have my usual settings here: sharpness +2, contrast +2, and then in my picture mode I have monotone set to low key. And then what I'm going to do is, let's just take a picture here and see how this looks. Alright, so that's looking better already. The problem I'm having though is there's some light spilling off into the background, so the wall is still showing, and the front of the camera is still a little bit too dark. So what I can do is I can either try and increase the power output of the on-camera flash, but by doing that I'm going to increase the light spill going onto the wall, so I probably don't think that's a good idea. So probably a better idea is to try to reflect some light onto the front of this. And I'll just use this little notepad here that I keep notes when I make these videos. I'll just put this here in front like this. Make sure it's out of frame, but I want it as close as possible. And let's take a picture here and try again. Okay, still a little bit too much light in the background, but I like the front now. The front of the camera, you can see where it says Olympus Pen on the front, and I really like that. But I want to get rid of the wall kind of being lit up in the background. And I think that has to do with probably the ambient light from my video lights here. So what I can do is just, let me just increase the aperture. That's 1 stop. Let's go 2 stops, make it 2 stops but darker. And if I do that, I'm going to have to increase the output of the light on the flash. So I'll show you that. 2 stops. So we're going to go 1/64th is 1 stop, 1/32nd is 2 stops. And while I'm at it, I'm going to narrow the beam of the flash so that it doesn't spread as wide. I'm going to try and narrow it down so that there'll be even less light spill towards the background. So what I would do is just hit the zoom button and rotate this up until I see 105. And we'll click the set button. So let's try that. All right, beautiful. It's a little bit hot. I think if I did this again, I would just, let me reduce this to 1/64th power. And I'll show you. Oops. Just there. Let's try that one more time. I think that looks pretty good. Now, there's a lot of settings on this flash that I didn't go over. Like I didn't talk about the radio trigger and all the other things because I really want to just answer that one question about how to get this flash to sync with the camera's flash. And you know, in another video I might just go into how to do the radio trigger stuff and all of that. But for now, that's all I wanted to cover.